رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الله تبارك وتعالى: قل إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني. وقال تبارك وتعالى: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وكرم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. If I can ask all the people that are here once, inshallah, to read salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Inshallah, it will increase our love for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But it's also a sign of the people of Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat, that the sign from amongst the signs of being from the Ahl Sunnah is those people that send salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If we all read it loud enough that we can hear it, then inshallah ta'ala we will feel as if there's a gathering of not only people here but also angels as well, mashallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad kama sallaita wa sallimna ala Sayyidina Ibrahim fil alameen innaka Hamidun Majid. This is one of those amals, this is one of those actions that we should never be shy of. The recitation of salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is to help us in this dunya, is to help us at the time of our death, is to help us at our death. It will help us in our death. It will help us in our graves. It will help us when we are resurrected from our graves. It will be helping us on the day of resurrection, and then it will help us go into paradise as well. When an action has so many virtues, then we should make abundance of its remembrance. For verily from the signs of love is what you love most, you mention often. Whatever we love, we will mention it often. This is from the signs of what we love. So if you want to speak and have an assessment of ourselves, because these gatherings are also a form of reflection. It's a form of assessment for us as to where we are with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's a moment of reflection as to how close we are to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's a moment of reflection to ask ourselves, how many times do we think of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How many times in a day do we remember the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How many times in a day do we yearn to gain his closeness sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How many times a day do we yearn and long to meet him sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Because this is what Islam is. Islam is a religion of connections. It connects us to someone, who connects them to someone, who connects them to someone, and before you know it, you are connected to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the job of the Prophet is what? One of the primary roles of the Prophets are to connect you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran al-Kareem, "Qul, say, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inform them, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in kuntum tuhibbun Allah, if you love Allah." The condition of loving the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When loving the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then why should we hold back in our expression of love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It is a command of Allah that if you love Allah, then you follow him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And following cannot be complete until you love him, because when you love him, then you will fulfill the rights of fattabi'uni, which means that you follow him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What makes us strong Muslims is our love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What makes us strong is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is our connection that he makes strong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by acting upon the sunnahs, by acting upon his ways, by acting upon his teachings. And I ask people one question, and that is, what is it that wakes you up for Salatul Fajr? Is it knowing that if you don't wake up for Salatul Fajr, that you will enter into the fire of hell? Is that something that motivates you every day to wake up for Salatul Fajr? But what you will realize is, those people that read the sifat of Jahannam,
they read the characteristics of the fire of hell, they'll get up because of the fear for a couple of days, for a couple of weeks, for a couple of months, but then he will die away. Because it's our fitrah. Insan it comprises of nisyan. Insan is comprised of forgetfulness. So we forget. And when we forget, we become very relaxed. But there is something that doesn't allow people to relax. There is something that doesn't allow us to be complacent. There is something that doesn't allow us to be heedless. And that is nothing other than love. When a person has love inside their heart, it makes them restless. When a person has love in their heart, they don't wait for the alarm clock in the morning for Salatul Fajr. When a person has and is burning with love, he doesn't wait to see what time is it. He's up and he's active and he's doing something because he knows he is pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's his love that makes him who he is. It's his love that allows him to follow without it being a form of hardship. Today I want to mention some of the narrations that Qadi Iyad rahimahullah mentions with regards to the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in and their burning love for the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. And when you ask this question, that what was the love of the Sahaba for the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, then you won't have the need to ask the question that did the Sahaba make Mawlid al-Nabi? Did the Sahaba celebrate the birth of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam? When you read the stories of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, when you read as to what they sacrificed and what they were willing to sacrifice for the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, you'd realize that from their own depths of their heart, they acted upon certain acts that today it puts us to shame as to what little we are doing in comparison to what great those people did. Their greatness that they did at that time is a reminder for us today that this mahfil that we have, the mahafil that we have across the world, not only in the UK or the subcontinent, the mahafils that we have across the world, the julus that people take out from their masajid, their expression of their love, you'll find it is very, very small in comparison to the love that the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in showed to the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. I'll mention a few narrations, and from these narrations you shall see the love of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in for the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. And this should be sufficient for us today, those that are here and those that are listening, that when you compare their love and their expression of their love for the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, you realize that today our expression is very, very small. And if anything, it puts us to shame that we should be doing so much more. We should be expressing our love in such a greater way, in a bigger way, in a way that we are telling people, we are shouting and screaming to the top of our voice, telling people what beauty holds within the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What beautiful characteristics are in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what the stories of the Sahaba teach us. What Imam Rashid al-Malik Hafizahullah was telling us. This was a narration from Sahih al-Bukhari. This narration tells us the extreme love that the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in had for the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, that was seen from the perspective of a non-Muslim. And he said that you will not be defeated. They will not be defeated as long as their love remains for the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Today, if we look at our states, if we look at the international affairs of the Muslim Ummah, if they are defeated, it's simply because the love of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam has been taken out of their hearts. It's been taken away. Allama Iqbal alayhi rahmah referred to this and said those were the individuals who gave and sacrificed their souls for the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam because it was the burning love that they had for him sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. They were the people with fewer clothes upon their shoulders and their backs. Very little clothes did they have. Those were the people that had one date, and that date they would suck on for their iftar and they would suck on the same date for their suhoor. But yet they were victorious at Badr. Those were the people that had no armor, they had no weaponry, and the very little that they had that they took, even the Jews looked at them and said, what are you going to fight the superpower with? What do you have to fight the superpower with? And they were laughing at the Muslim community that set off from Medina al-Munawwara with very, very little means. They said, we have Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. That's all they had, and that's all they believed in, and that was sufficient. Today Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, hasn't He given the Muslim Ummah? When you look at resources, the Muslim Ummah is full of it. When you look at wealth, the Muslim Ummah has it. When you look at sustenance, the Muslim Ummah has it. But we are defeated. Why? Because people have taken the love of Allah and His Rasul out of our hearts. And when the love of Rasulullah is taken away, then we have people that are defeatist. Our leaders are those individuals that can't read and recite Quran al-Kareem correctly. Our leaders are those that have no knowledge of the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if they have no knowledge of the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what will give them that burning love? The likes of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in. These are the questions that we need to ask. Similarly, in our own communities, today if our masajid are empty, it's simply because we haven't introduced the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to them. We haven't introduced his seerah to our young people. We've given them nothing to love, and then we ask them to come to the masjid. We have failed, and we have to accept that we have failed. But at the same time, once we have accepted that we have failed, we need to be very proactive. As Michael Twain once said, he said, falsehood travels around the world before truth decides to put on its boots. And when truth does decide to put on its boots, then it travels faster than falsehood. So we still have time, alhamdulillah. Today in our madrasa we're dealing with over 470 children, alhamdulillah. We have time, we have a chance to renew that love in their hearts. But when a child says to you that I didn't read Quran all week because I was memorizing for my science test, then we have a problem. Because no one in his family said, son, if you learn how to read the Quran, everything that you learn in science is in the Quran al-Kareem. When you tell your children that you learn maths, it's good to learn maths, but you'll find in the Quran, in the Sunnah, all the functions of maths that you want, you'll find greater ulum in the Quran al-Kareem. We haven't told our children, when you memorize Quran, Allah opens your hearts so much so that any science and dunyawi science of the world will be easy to absorb. When a person is able to memorize the entire Quran, of course he's able to memorize formulas. Of course he's able to memorize the periodic table. Of course he's able to memorize physics and science and chemistry and maths and technology and all sorts. But we haven't introduced those. We haven't prioritized the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until we change our homes, until we introduce the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, until they fall in love with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They fall in love with the Quran al-Kareem. This lesson, this Tuesday, I was speaking about Surah Abasa in our lesson, on our weekly lesson that we have. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says towards the end of Surah Abasa, ثُمَّ السَّبِيلَ يَسَّرَهُ. And then the path Allah made easy. In the translation of that, most translations will tell you that the path that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made easy is the path of khair and shar, good and evil. But if you read another translation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about how the fetus that develops into a child, that child whose head and face is above and his feet are pointing towards the bottom and the lower end of the female's womb, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this ayah, ثُمَّ السَّبِيلَ يَسَّرَهُ, means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given that intellect to that child in the womb of his mother, that now the time of delivery is close, I should turn myself so that my head is the first that is delivered. This is Quran. This is tafsir of Quran. If Quran is telling us this, then what science is telling us now, the Quran told us 1400 years ago. Something that people say that the Prophet ﷺ did not have the knowledge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed him of the Quran. And he says, Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran. If Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, the most compassionate, he taught him Quran, he taught him these verses. And the Prophet ﷺ knew what was the changing and the development of the fetus. Did he not know what the gender of that fetus and that child was? These are things that we have distanced ourselves from. And when we have distanced ourselves from it, our mind is telling us that secular studies is more prevalent and more better and more beneficial than Quranic studies, more beneficial than Islamic studies, more beneficial than the studies that we have in the dunya. We ourselves have taken children away from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we've shown a precedence to the secular studies. Today this child said to me that I was learning my maths, my science subject, and I didn't touch my Bible. He couldn't recognize letters from the Quran. And this child wasn't an elder child, a younger child, he was 12, 13 years old. A 12 or 13-year-old child that cannot recognize letters of the Quran al-Kareem. And then we also have a 7-year-old child that has memorized the entire Quran. The question here is, what are we prioritizing in our homes? And the priority should be that we bring our children into the masajid. Priority is to bring our children to the masjid. Priority is to introduce the Prophet ﷺ to our children. And that will benefit us in this dunya, that will benefit us in the hereafter also. Because if we don't introduce our children today, tomorrow those children will have no characteristics from the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Those children will not become obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those children will not become obedient to the Prophet ﷺ. And not only that, if they are disobedient to Allah and His Rasul, they will be disobedient to their parents, to their fathers, and they will be disobedient to their mothers. Today, it's the responsibility of homes, of masajid, of our communities, that we bring our children to the masajid. We show them the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today, parents say to me, my child has been coming to the masjid for 4 years. My child has been coming to the masjid for 5 years. And I say to them, Alhamdulillah, what a proud moment for you that you have brought your child to the masjid for 4 years and 5 years. They say, no, we can't do anymore. 4 or 5 years is sufficient and that's it. Now he's got to be a greater man, a greater woman. Now they have to memorize for their exams, GCSEs, A-levels. Does this mean that education is only for 4 years? And then they place the burden on us? Today, at the very least, what we need to do is for every moment a child spends amongst the non-Muslims, we should replace that time that the child spends with Muslims. And when a child is exposed to a beautiful environment, a beautiful culture of Islam, they see the beauty of Islam, they see similar type of people, similar-minded people. They see people walk to the masjid, they see people go to the masjid, they hear the adhan. They hear the adhan. There is nothing in the world that can replace hearing and listening to the adhan. Hearing to the words of Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest. Our children don't hear the adhan if they don't come to the masjid. Renewing their testification of their iman when they hear the adhan. How beautiful is that? Today children find it difficult to even recite the shahadatain. They find it difficult to translate the shahadatain. They find it difficult to equate to the shahadatain. They find it difficult to understand how to implement the shahadatain in their daily lives. This is all education. Education, religious education, dini education, we should give a priority to. Then you will see its benefit in this dunya, in the hereafter also, inshallah ta'ala. On the day of judgment, there will be the ayah of the Quran, also in Surah Abasa says that there will be that day when the husband and the women and the wife flee from one another, when the children flee from one another, when the companions flee from one another. And in the tafsir of that ayah, one of the mufassirun have said that on the day of judgment, the children will hold their parents by their necks and they will say, did you not introduce me to the deen of Islam? Did you not educate me? Did you not give me what was obligatory for me to know? This is our obligation to fulfill for our children. Today, when you listen to someone read the kalima and they can't say the name of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it really does hurt. That we're in the houses of Muslims and we can't say Mohammed sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This beautiful name, this name that Sayyidah Halima Sa'adi, Sayyidah Amina was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sayyidah Amina says that I was sleeping when I was pregnant with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and I heard a voice and he said, إِنَّكِ حَمِلَتْ بِخَيْرِ الْعَالَمِينَ, that indeed you are carrying the best of Allah's creation. فَصَمَّيْتُهُ مُحَمَّدًا, we have named him Muhammad. This name that will be our intercessor, this name which is adorned in Jannah. Today we can't pronounce it. We should think, and this is what the meaning of Miladun Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to get together, is to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for making us Muslim and then giving us that portion of love from the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een. And know one thing, it's normal that not everyone deserves the Mawlid of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. With those words, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase our love and increase the love of the future generations for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Only a sound community is a community that is imbued in the love of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله.